Huge amounts of turnovers before opponents even crossed half court. Harassed every dribble, every catch, every pivot. The press wasn't a tactic, it was an identity.
The scoring factory on 3. 1, 2, 3, scoring factory.
What's going on, everybody? Coach Kevin with the Scoring Factory, back with episode 24 of our breakdown series. Today, we're breaking down Bob Huggins' Press Virginia, the full court, suffocating, chaos-creating defense that turned the Mountaineers into a national nightmare. From 2015 to 2018, West Virginia finished number one again, and number 2 in turnover percentage. Their entire identity was built on pressure, not just forcing mistakes, but also dictating how teams played from the opening tip to the final buzzer. But before we look at the X's and O's, we need to understand the philosophy, because Press Virginia wasn't just a press, it was an entire belief system. Most pressing teams try to speed you up, and while West Virginia did that as well, their first priority was to make you uncomfortable. Every catch, every dribble, every pivot. The moment that you put the ball on the floor, you were in danger. Huggins built the entire system around 3 pillars. The first is relentless full court pressure every possession. The second were that their traps were triggered by the dribble and not necessarily the location. And the third was constant pre-rotation. Players moved before the pass was ever made. It looks chaotic, but it's controlled. Every trap has a purpose, every rotation has a rule, and every player understands where the ball is not allowed to go. When you watch clips of Press Virginia, it's easy to think that it's just a chaotic full-court man-to-man press. But when you break it down, there's actually 3 layers to how West Virginia built their pressure: full denial, run and jump rotations, and selective hard trapping. So let's start with the very first action, the inbound. WVU didn't just pressure the ball, they tried to make the inbound itself a battle. Almost every player face guarded their man, standing in between the inbounder and the receiver with their back to the ball. No peeking, no shadowing, just pure denial. The goal was simple: force the inbounder to throw to someone they didn't want to, or force them to use their timeout. When opponents finally did get it in, it was usually to a big or a weaker handler, and that alone gave WVU an advantage. Now, once the ball was in, WVU flowed into what they were best known for, the run and jump. This wasn't a press that you could recognize from the setup. Players matched up man-to-man, then tried to funnel the ball handler to one side and waited for specific triggers, whether that's a back turn, a sideline drift, or a loose handle. When that moment hit, the nearest help defender ran at the dribbler, while the original defender jumped off to cover the open man. That unpredictable switch, when executed at full speed, created instant confusion. Opponents weren't sure who was guarding who, which often led to rushed, off-balance passes. But here's the part people sometimes forget. WVU didn't rely only on the run and jump. They mixed in true aggressive traps, especially when the ball was inbounded deep into the corner or caught near the sideline. If the offense allowed themselves to be pinned in a bad spot, the Mountaineers didn't switch. They just closed the trap hard, hands active, and forced the ball into the air. So the opponent's first read is, are they switching the run and jump, or am I about to get trapped? That hesitation alone was worth a turnover. And unlike most pressing teams, WVU didn't only wait for a made basket. They pressed on makes, misses, and dead balls. Off misses, they sprinted to match up immediately, then hunted that trigger. Find the ball, force a directional dribble, then run and jump or trap right in the open court. Because teams almost never practiced breaking a press while transitioning from defense to offense, WVU got huge amounts of turnovers before opponents even crossed half court. This resulted in constant unpredictability. Deny the inbounder, disguise the pressure, then either switch the run and jump or slam a hard trap depending on the angle. Every possession began with the offense already uncomfortable, and that was the entire point. So why did Press Virginia work at such an elite level? Plenty of teams press, but very few do it well, and almost none did it with the consistency that West Virginia did for nearly a decade. There are 4 major reasons this system was so brutally effective: personnel, conditioning, unpredictability, and psychological pressure. Let's start with personnel. WVU built their roster specifically for this system. Longer guards with relentless motors, guys like Javon Carter, Daxter Miles, Tariq Phillip, plus interchangeable wings who could guard multiple spots. They didn't need elite size. They needed athletes who never took a play off. Most teams had 1 or 2 capable ball handlers. WVU had 8 or 9 capable defenders who would pick you up the full 94 feet. The press wasn't a tactic, it was an identity. Next is conditioning. Press Virginia wasn't something you could fake your way through. You had to commit to it from day one. Practices were built around constant movement, full court pressure, and defensive rotations at game speed. By February, WVU was playing faster and harder than most teams even could. While other teams wore down, WVU ramped up. Their depth and fitness became a weapon that directly created turnovers late in games. Now, let's talk unpredictability. The brilliance of the system is that it never gave offenses a stable picture. On one possession, it's full denial on the inbound. The next, opponents get the ball in cleanly but immediately face a run and jump. The next time down, they're hit with a hard trap in the coffin corner. After that, they press off a missed shot when most teams drop back. As an offense, you could never get comfortable. You never made 2 identical outlet passes in a row. Even when WVU didn't steal the ball, they dictated pace and decision making. And finally, maybe the biggest factor was psychological pressure. By the 10-minute mark of the first half, opposing guards often looked exhausted, not just physically, but mentally. They knew they were going to be harassed every dribble, every catch, every pivot. Even simple entries felt risky. What WVU really stole wasn't just the ball, it was rhythm. Teams played faster than they wanted to, used up their timeouts, and became so focused on surviving the pressure that they stopped running their offense. And when your opponent becomes reactive instead of proactive, you've already won. As dominant and disruptive as Press Virginia was, no system's perfect, and over time, teams started learning how to exploit the cracks. There were 3 main weaknesses that smart offenses consistently attacked: the middle of the floor, early shot selection, and foul trouble. One of the foundational principles of pressing is using the sideline and baseline as extra defenders. WVU was brilliant at trapping along the edges, but that also meant that the middle became the most valuable real estate on the court. Teams that broke the press most effectively didn't dribble through it, they passed through it. They put their best decision maker in the middle third, flashed him hard to the nail or the logo, and forced WVU to collapse. Once the ball hit the middle, everything unraveled. WVU lost their trap angles, they had to scramble in rotation, and a lot of time opponents could get 3-on-2 or 2-on-1 advantages. The second is giving up early high-quality shots. While WVU's press was designed to increase tempo, the trade-off is that when opponents break it cleanly, they often have numbers advantages. Smart teams didn't slow down to keep the ball, they attacked immediately. Opponents who committed to this approach got open layups, early clock threes, and back-breaking dunks before WVU could recover. The press was feast or famine. Yes, it created turnovers, but it also occasionally gave up premium shot quality. And the third is foul trouble and fatigue among your key defenders. There is the issue of fouls. Playing this aggressively comes with risk. When Javon Carter, Miles, or Konate picked up early fouls, the press lost its bite. The system relied on pressure without bailing out ball handlers. But at times, WVU's physicality worked against them. Teams put them in the bonus early, and the cumulative effect slowed games down, which played right into the opponent's hands. While these counters didn't solve Press Virginia, they showed the blueprint. Attack the middle, hunt early offense, and force the press to defend without fouling. The teams that stuck to that formula gave WVU the most trouble. Unfortunately, like all great systems, Press Virginia eventually declined. Not because the idea stopped working, but because the conditions that made it possible changed. First, there was a personnel shift. WVU had a perfect storm of personnel from about 2014 to 2018. Tough guards, deep benches, interchangeable athletes, and a point of attack menace in Javon Carter. As recruiting shifted and the roster evolved, the team simply didn't have the same depth of tenacious defenders. Pressing at this level requires 9 or 10 capable bodies. Later, WVU often only had 5 or 6. The second is increased ball skills across college basketball. Ball handling improved nationwide, which was a huge factor. More teams recruited multiple playmakers. Stretch bigs became better passers. Guards grew more comfortable handling pressure. The kinds of teams that used to wilt against the press were now breaking it with more poise. The third is the rule emphasis on freedom of movement. The NCAA began emphasizing freedom of movement with hand checks, body bumps, and physical ride-outs, which were staples of the press, now called more tightly. WVU didn't stop being aggressive, but the whistle started taking away possessions that they used to generate. And last, the press is a lifestyle. It's not a switch you can turn on and off. You can't half press. The peak version of Press Virginia required a total program identity. Every single drill, every single practice, every single lineup decision. Once the roster or philosophy moved even slightly away from that, and with the prevalence of the transfer portal, the press became less sustainable. But Press Virginia didn't fade because it was outdated. It faded because it was rare. Few programs have the commitment, the athletes, and the cultural buy-in to run a true system press anymore, especially in the NIL and transfer portal era of college basketball. But its impact still echoes. Teams borrow the run and jump principles. Programs study its rotations, and coaches everywhere still look at those mid-2010s WVU teams as the gold standard of sustained system-level pressure. So even though Press Virginia may not exist in its original form anymore, its legacy carved into modern basketball. A reminder that effort, chaos, and identity can completely reshape a program and entire games for years. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment what you want to see next. Follow us on our social medias at The Scoring Factory. And as always, I will see everybody in the next video.